creating a humanoid robot, like every single mechanical thing has been solved, every single one. So now it's software.
That's really interesting. So basically, you can automate the manufacturing with robotics already. It's just software that's the bottleneck.
Yeah, and actually, it is software, and even more than that, it is the cost of software. Because give me any task, give me $10 million, and I automate the task for you. Any task. The thing is, very, very few processes in manufacturing can justify such a high level of automation. And the secret is that you now have like 50K robots, 25K robots, but the cost of programming, having a human doing the thing, having a human understand the concept, doing so that the concept is rigid, having always the same thing at the same place, being automated in the same way and everything. The cost of that is so high that a lot of things have not been automated.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're thrilled to have Renan on the program. He's the CEO and founder of OSS Ventures. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the first thing that we'd love to learn is how to say your name. And we were kind of giggling about this before we started recording. Maybe you could, for us Americans out here, maybe you could tell us how to say your name like a French person.
So if you're in France, you say Renan, and anywhere else in the world, basically you say Renan.
You know, my son's actually taking French in high school right now, and I asked him, I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting. Why are you taking French?" He goes, "Oh, because no one else is. It's not a normie language," is what he called it. Like everybody in his high school is taking Spanish because California, and he wanted to differentiate himself. And he's really into math too. So and the French obviously have a long history there. But maybe you could walk us through your background, you know, like your origin story and how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Sure. I was good at math. So in France, when you're good at math, the state pays for your school. And so the state paid for my studies. I was like one of the best math school in France. And then like 1 week before finishing my studies, I learned through a friend, because I wasn't going to the courses, that I had either to repay what the state had given me, or I had to become a public servant. So I Googled highest paid public servant France, and I ended up with being an economist at the OECD, specialized in industry. And I did that for 2 years and 1 day to repay my debts. After that, I worked in consulting,
Basically, forced labor. You had to go be an economist for the government.
Yes, exactly.
To basically pay back your...
Yeah. And so I did that for 2 years and 1 day. Then I became a consultant specialized in manufacturing and operations, became a factory director. I worked in luxury, defense, aerospace. And after 10 years of corporate life, I realized that there was a pattern. And the pattern was I was given a new job, and then people would threaten to like fire me, and then I would overperform and I would get promoted to another job. And the cycle would like again and again and again. It was like, that's an interesting pattern. And I realized I was an entrepreneur.
I've had the same experience in corporate life. Exactly.
Really?
Oh, right. Yeah. You get in and you're outperforming everybody around you, and you threaten the status quo.
Yes.
Right? Because you're working hard.
Yes.
You know, my story was I worked for Boeing out of college in finance, and I was also good at math, probably not as good as you, but, you know, so I got a finance degree, and, you know, I worked full time in college. So I worked full time through school to kind of pay for school, and grew up, you know, poor kid, whatever. But, you know, I got to Boeing and I'd get my whole week's worth of work done in 2 hours. Yeah. And I've told this story on the podcast. So any longtime listeners are like, all right, rolling their eyes right now. But, you know, the guy next to me would be like, hey, why don't you slow down a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, why would I slow down? Like I got all the work done. And are there any errors in the work? And he goes, no, it's perfect. But we kind of take our time around here, you know? Yeah. And that always stuck with me.
Someone said to me, you're way too intense. Stop caring so much. And I was like, I'm going to spend 75% of my awake time not caring. Like what? So yeah.
It's like that show, Severance. Have you seen that show on Apple?
Yes, exactly.
Severance?
Yes, exactly.
It's exactly like that. Terrible. People just want to go to work and completely separate their lives. But I think entrepreneurs can't do that. That's a cognitive dissonance for us.
Yeah.
You know, my wife and I used to fight about this. because I wouldn't be fulfilled at work. I'm like, well, my work should be fulfilling. I should really want to do it, because you spend half your waking hours doing it, roughly. She goes, no, just stop trying to find fulfillment out of your work. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to stop. And I kept iterating and iterating and iterating. And I found my way to startups and venture capital and all that stuff. And if I didn't keep iterating and trying things,
Oh
I
yeah,
wouldn't be where I'm at today. I'd be probably sitting at Boeing, just miserable.
doing Excel spreadsheets, being
Yeah.
automated by AI.
Right. Yeah. So you realize you're an entrepreneur. That's a good self-awareness. And then what happened next?
So I realized I'm an entrepreneur, and so I quit my job, and I searched what to do, and I decided that I had unique exposure to an interesting issue, and the interesting issue is recruiting people who are very bad at writing their curriculum vitae. Because when I was a factory director, I had hired like hundreds of people, very low skill, and some of them were awesome, and some of them were awful. Like the 10x engineer, it exists also in the blue collar world. And so I said, okay, I'm going to leverage AI to basically put the right people at the right place. Because in my mind, it was an allocation problem, like putting the right people in the right job. Because like in the grand scheme of things, if you love talking with people and you have like no qualifications, you're probably going to love, I don't know, being the front desk at an hotel. But you're going to just be very miserable in a warehouse. But if you love details and you don't like talking to people, you're going to love the warehouse and you're going to be miserable in the front desk. So I leverage AI for that. We found product market fit in like 1 year and a half. I moved to San Francisco and Brazil. I actually moved our primary market to Brazil because GDPR made our business illegal somehow, because you cannot hire someone purely by an algorithm. Like that's a law in Europe. They like to make law about everything. So yeah, we did that and it went kind of crazy.
That's crazy. So even if you
Yeah.
can explain why the
Yeah.
algorithm chose candidate A over B, it was still illegal.
It has to be a human taking the final decision. The final decision can be informed by an algorithm, but it can be made by an algorithm. And the whole point was getting the human bias out of the picture. So yeah, so we did seed Series A, Series B, and I sold my share at Series B, and so I ended up with a bunch of money. And I was like, I'm not coming from money, and so I got money, and I was like, what I'm going to do? And I visited the Tesla factory in the Bay Area, and I was like, okay, I want to spend my next 10 years of life doing that to all factories in the world. That was the aha moment after I made some money. And so I started OSS. That's the origin story in a nutshell.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So you're at a startup, it's scaling, you guys get to Series B, and
Yeah.
there's a discussion with your board, and it's like, hey, maybe we need a professional CEO, or maybe it's time, or it was time for you to leave. Like, tell us about that transition.
Yeah, I was a CPTO, and so the CEO was another co-founder. So I was managing tech and product, and like there was a meeting where some backend engineer was discussing about like server cost and how we should do 4 sprints to get like 8% less server. And I was like, okay, I'm firing myself from the T. So I
It
became
wasn't
CPO.
0 to 1 anymore. It wasn't
Yeah.
fun for you. Yeah.
Yes.
It was just like, okay, now we're going 9 to 10, 10 to 11.
Yeah.
Like
And
grinding out little efficiencies. And
yeah, I was sitting in that meeting thinking, I literally wrote the first Jupyter notebook for the data science of this company 2 years ago. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So fired myself, become the product guy. And then like B was about like scaling the company, getting it to 120 people, having processes. And I was like, nah, that's not me. And so we made a deal with my co-founders, and I sold half of my shares, kept the other half, and that was a windfall. And that was honestly very scary, kind of, because it was unknown territory for me, not having to grind every second of every day. Like it was very new to me.
yeah, that's amazing. And what's spurring that trip to the Tesla factory? Not just anyone could just go to that factory and
Yeah,
look around.
so my after I sold the company, I was literally making calls in the living room, like walking around the table. And my wife told me, you should probably get a WeWork because either you or I will become crazy. And so took a WeWork, made a bunch of calls with friends saying, hey, what are you up to? I tried also coding and having discussions with people having made some money, saying, hey, what do you do with your days? One of my friends was working at Tesla, and he said to me, hey, you know manufacturing, so you should come and visit. And there was that program where you could have some like outsiders visiting at the time. It was just before production hell, just before they put like the tents on the parking lots. So
Oh yeah, that's like what, 2018 when the Model 3 was rolling out or
yeah,
something.
I exited beginning of 19. So yeah, it was that time. Like at this point, I had visited, I think, hundreds of factories. And this was the first factory I was seeing like that. And so I told myself, it is as if one guy was visiting the first water mill and there was no water mill in his region. Like it was this level of difference. And so I thought, okay, this is my thing. I need to do that now.
And so it was just the level of automation and just how efficient everything looked compared to all the other factories that you'd seen?
It was wildly inefficient, actually. The factory was thought like a computer, and the profile of people working in that factory were more like tech people, data people, computer people. All the ratios were off. If you buy something physical, on average, you're buying like $4 of software every $100 of physical products. At Tesla, it was something bonkers like 20.
Maybe you could repeat that. So there's the bill of materials.
So out of $100 of costs, for a typical factory, $4 is software, like the ERP, other systems. At Tesla, it was 20. So everything was software. So everything was different. The profile of people, data scientists, people like, and the thinking. For example, this will sound absolutely stupid, but I was blown away by something, which is I had been in like hundreds of factories up before that factory. And the way you put code in a machine is always the same. You write the code and then you push the code to the machine physically. You put a USB stick in the machine. They had developed something to push code like as a continuous process, tens of machines at the same time, which is thinking that is like very common in tech, but was unheard of in manufacturing. And so I thought, okay, so wait. If you have the same machines in different factories, then it means that maybe like two coders can push code on like hundreds of machines. This is not happening like anywhere in the world. This was not happening anywhere in the world.
They just didn't think holistically about setting up the factory that way. It was very much kind of line driven. Okay, we're going to run this one line in this one way and this next line in another way. And it's very discrete serialization of the steps.
And very, very computer, like continuous improvement, leverage for each participant, like all of those very, very basic concepts that you see in computer and CS, that's basically manufacturing had missed for years. And so, yes, all of those things, it blew me away. Like I couldn't sleep for like 2 days.
So what did you do next? So you're blown away by Tesla and their manufacturing process, and you're like, okay, this is what I want to work on.
So I had a very simple plan. We spoke with my wife, and she said, I want to get back. Like, I want to go to Europe. I don't want to go to the US. I was like, okay. So we went to Europe, and I said, okay, I have some money. I'm going to be an investor in tech companies for manufacturing. So I did what any nerd would do. I wrote a crawler, and I crawled, I think it was like 450 startups operating in software technology for factories.
450 startups?
Yes, in Europe and the US. And I called them all.
You personally wrote that many checks?
No. I just made a list.
Oh,
and
okay.
I called them
here's all. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And I called them all, basically saying, hey, I want to become an investor. And I made 3 realizations. First, the average founder was very, very bad, unfortunately, at the time. Meaning that the average level of a fintech founder was like way better than the average level of a manufacturing founder. So that was one issue. Second issue is all of those companies were very slow in having their first dollar of sales. Like, because if you want to operate in a factory, you need to write code to play with their ERP. You need to be cybersecurity compliant and everything. And so the barrier to starting is just so high that the companies are slow. So that was second. And the third was the companies were not growing very, very fast when they were finding product market fit. So I did that in like 2 months, 3 months. And in 3 months, I said, okay, so you're going to be an investor as a first check in an asset class where there are only 450 companies that you could find that are slow. The founders are not that good. and they don't scale. And so it's like, maybe that's not the plan. And so that's when I called a bunch of my smartest friends that I know. And one of them, Riley, told me, hey, so there is a space. You think you can create massive value. You think it's a lot of companies, not just one big company. Like, you don't buy the SAP thesis. So instead of trying to invest in companies that don't exist and don't scale, just create the companies. Like, become a serial company creation guy. And so that's how we launched OSS Ventures 4.5 years ago. That was
And
the
that's the
story.
harder path. And
Yeah.
what does OSS stand for?
So it's Operation Startup Studio. Very simple.
Operation Startup what?
Studio.
Studio. Got it. Okay. So it's a venture studio. And your realization was, hey, we're not going to be able to go invest in these world-class entrepreneurs. We're going to have to incubate them and grow them and launch them, because how you need to think and operate is so different from the status quo. There's just not an ecosystem. You just can't go down to the YC of Europe manufacturing accelerators and just start picking the best entrepreneurs. You literally need to grow them. So what did you do next? So that was the thesis, and what kind of did you form a fund? Did you fundraise for it, or was it all your own money? Tell us about that.
So the first 2 years were my own money. And so it was a conversation with my wife. And I said, hey, honey, we're going to buy the apartment and everything. Like, you'll be fine. But I want to reinvest a very significant portion of the money we made in creating something that has never been done in an asset class that historically sucks. And she was like, go for it. Trust you. So my wife is awesome. And then, so I decided, okay, I'm doing that for 2 years. And then I see if it works. But I'm going all in. And so I basically called factories and I said, hey, like a retiree of the startup game, but I can visit your factory if you want. I can look for pain points and I will create that nice report saying everything that can be better in your factory, and that's free. But if we find a pain point we want to work on, we can launch a company. And so factories, like, I had like 40% of factories saying yes, which already showed that there was traction. So visited 10 factories, found 2 pain points, found 4 entrepreneurs wanting to launch those 2 ventures with us, created those 2, and the first one has been closed, and the second one just fundraised $25 million literally last month, and is a $100 person company. They are doing more than 10 million in sales, and they are live in like 600 factories, something like that. So
That's amazing. Yeah. So you literally went on boots on the ground, figured
yep.
out what the factories were struggling with, and say, hey, there's technology or a different system that an entrepreneur and a technologist can build here to make this more efficient. So how do you systematize that idea of validation at scale and kind of the founder matching problem as well?
Yeah. So on the idea, we since have visited 860 factories all over the world, and we have a database with a little over 14,000 hours of user research of my team, because now we are 20 of us, of my team talking to people. And then we are using an LLM, and we are once a quarter looking at all the data and saying, okay, what are the new issues or what are the new technologies that let us solve those issues and everything, and what is the willingness to pay. And basically now, when we decide to launch something, we have between 5 and 10 early adopters already validated because we had all those conversations. And so my team each week goes to 1 to 3 factories, talk to people for like 8 hours straight, and we put everything in a big database. And so every quarter we have new things coming up and coming up and coming up. So that's the validation. And then the founder matchings. 70% of our founders are second-time founders, so already created and exited the company. And we always go with one technical and one non-technical founder. Usually they share the thesis, like the world of operation, reshoring, those kind of things. And then we are very upfront. We say, hey, we are going to work together for 12 weeks. We are going to try and create that company and everything. And we are going to give it our best shot. And after 12 weeks, there is a 40% chance that we say that we don't want to work with you. And the 40% figure has been steady for like 18 months now.
So a little less than half, you get to the end of the 12 weeks, and that pair or maybe one of the two is just not going to, they're just not the right founders for some reason. And so you restart the cycle.
Yeah. So we have a process, we have a grid and everything, but at the end of the day, it's either a hell yeah or it's no.
I love saying that internally with my analyst. I say the exact same thing. Is this a hell yes? If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's funny.
polarized.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be hell yes. This has got to be, yeah, this is the best thing I've ever seen. That's so funny that you have that same saying.
And so, yeah, that's how we do it. And so maybe some numbers about OSS. We started 22 companies, 19 of them are live right now, and 11 did a Series A. They are collectively doing a little over 42 million ARR, and we are live in 2,200 factories in 4.5 years.
Amazing. What a great impact. Looking back at these founders, what have you learned about selecting for them and what traits make them succeed in this particular market?
That's interesting. I would say that there are a lot of right to play type of traits. So in the right to play, you are dealing with manufacturing, so you are dealing with the fabric of society. And so there's no room for like error and like approximation. So you need to be able to convince a factory director that you're that type of people, and then you need to be able to deliver. Obsession with getting things right, doing things right, and being trustful, basically. So that's an absolute right to play. Then another is, I like to say that manufacturing software tech is golf. So it means that if you fuck up one hole, you're done. So there's not a lot of room for approximation in those. Another trait is being able to basically do challenger sales, like challenge the way people are thinking in front of you. A manufacturer will never come to you and say, hey, I need this exact thing with this exact brand of AI, and this is that. No, they don't have those skills. So the founder needs to be able to dream for them, basically, to have more ambition than their counterparts. So that's hard because you need to pair that with being trustful. So yeah. And then insane grit, basically taking hits in the face all day and getting up anyways.
Yeah, and these are all really, really good traits for founders. And how do you flesh those out? Like as you're interviewing them, like how much time do you spend with these founders? I mean, you do the 12-week thing, which, we know the success rate there. But, before you say, hey, let's do this and give them a term sheet or a contract, like how much time and what does the interview process look like?
So we have a 4-step interview process. I think like last year we had like 800 serious applicants. So that's a lot of applications to sort through. The 4-step process is supposed to look at different facets of personality. And I think there is like 20% drop rate between each step. So it's kind of brutal. We also give, so the non-technical founders, they have a case study, which is basically the startup they're going to build. And we have a lot of very kind of provocative questions. Things like, what's your number? Like, what's the number at which you stop working? How big is a big win to you? We do a lot of reference call, like for the final stage, it's like 5 to 10. And still, we get it wrong 40% of the time, which is humbling.
Do you ever stop and think maybe we don't need to? You've probably iterated on your process over time and improved it. But if you're still like maintaining at that 40%, do you want to see that number go higher? Do you want to get it to 60 or 70 over time? Do you think that's possible? Or is it just kind of like that's where it's going to be? Because entrepreneurship is really hard and it's really hard to select for those traits.
It's a good question. I was like, we were having that big discussion in partnership, and I was like, I'm not sure this number should be 20 nor 80. I know it needs to be non-zero, and I know it needs to be non-100, but I have no very clear view. And to be fair, the caliber of founders we've been able to attract over the years has just skyrocketed. Like the average founder of the last 4 founders has like a 10 million plus exit under his or her belt and other traits that we simply didn't have in the first cohort of founders. But we are still iterating on the process 2 times a year and still learning. So no definitive answer for that.
Yeah. It's like I look back, I've made 225 investments as of right now, and I'm doing 100 a year across my 2 active funds. I'm very, very high volume, a little different from you. And I look back at all the investments that have been successful and have failed. I mean, the ones that have worked out, I look back at my decision-making process and my deal memo and my notes, and I'm like, yeah, this was like an easy and fast yes at the time. It's not something I deliberated on, like a great deal. Had the half-hour call, ran, an hour of due diligence, because, I'm doing 100 a year. And I was like, yeah, this is an easy, fast yes. Yeah. And it's those marginal ones where I kind of convinced myself, like there was something about the deal that wasn't good, or tried to explain away one factor of my evaluation criteria that wasn't, a 4 or a 5 out of 5. That it was those that ended up not working out as much.
There's that. Have you read the book like Thinking Fast and Slow?
Yeah, Dan Kahneman, System
Yeah.
1, System 2. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that fascinating thing, which is like with tennis players, like the moment that they hit the ball, they can say if they will win the point or not.
Yeah,
And
like I play basketball and it's the same thing. As soon as it goes off your fingertips, and I've been playing basketball since I was a kid. Never played at like a professional level, but I still
yeah,
play. And as soon as it leaves your fingertips,
Yeah.
if that shot's going in. And I think being an investor is like that. It's like
exactly.
Steph Curry knows it's going in, and so he just turns and runs back.
Yeah.
He just knows.
Like to us, it's like the 4 or 6 weeks. Actually, I should run that number because we say 12 weeks, but sometimes we end at 6 weeks. But most of
You
the
end
time
early.
we follow
You just kind of
through.
know it's not working
Yeah.
out at 6. You have a check-in at 6 weeks. Yeah.
But most of the time we said yes at 12 weeks. At 6 weeks we knew, basically. Because you've been in trenches for like 6 weeks, working like dogs.
Yeah. And I feel the same way about investing in the early stages, after doing hundreds of investments and probably meeting, I don't know, probably 10,000 founders now over a 6-7 year period now. You just kind of know. I almost know right away by the end of the call. I mean,
Yeah.
I still do the due diligence and I, verify everything and check everything, but that's more like hey, just watching out for any red flags here or yellow flags. But yeah, it's kind of like Steph Curry, I'm not Steph Curry, but leaves the fingertips or it comes off the tennis racket and you know that one's good. And if it doesn't feel good, then it's time for another serve.
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's time for another shot.
Which is awesome because the one thing that I'm discovering with OSS is that it's incredible to be young, to have a lot of shots at the same thing and still pursue the same vision. Like it's literally the best position in the world. Could not think of a better position.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about that.
I was very stressed during my first company, like very stressed. I was like, are we doing the right thing? Are we everything? Because I felt like I had only one shot. It ended up that I got the money and everything. But now with OSS, we're literally starting 4 companies per year. The intensity, the pressure level, the speed of iteration, everything has gone up. Like all of the companies that we are creating are going faster than the first company I created alone. But there's that kind of like zen, knowing that, and also it helps that our fund is like basically up more than 8x since the beginning. So we have so much time and the opportunity is so massive. Like you have that sense of urgency, but also you're grounded in pursuing it. I don't know if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. So how is this actually playing out on the factory floor? Is all this adoption of AI and automation? Where are you kind of seeing a lot of traction? Where is there still a lot of opportunity? We all hear about AI and agents coming, and you got your boots on the ground there. Maybe you could tell us more what's happening.
So what's very interesting, 3 things. 1, automation is actually coming for the white collars, not the blue ones. So if you take a typical factory in the 80s, so it's like 700 people, 150 white collars, and the rest was blue collars. You look at a typical factory now, it's like 200 people. It's like 100 blue collars operating a lot of machines, outputting twice the production. But it's also 100 white collars with Excel sheets and antiquated software. And the ones that are in the process of getting automated with AI and agents are the white collars. One of our portfolio company, Cognix, one of their clients is going from 80 to like 10 industrialization engineers for the same output. One of our luxury clients said in their yearly review that they wanted to do 80% productivity gain in their supply chain function. Like those are the order of magnitude that we are talking about. So 1 is automation of white collar. 2 is the budgets are polarizing, meaning that the typical factory will probably have like 2 to 3 projects this year, but those are big ones, like 80% supply chain productivity, 50% quality management, things like that. So the budgets are polarizing, but the gains are very high. And the third is, according to our first analysis, about a third of projects make it. And the projects that do make it never are fully automated. So you go from 80 supply chain professionals with Excel to 5 data scientists with agents. But the 5 data scientists are monitoring, creating the rules, managing that it works, debugging when needed and everything. So it's not zero. It's never zero. And so the thing that we are seeing over and over and over again is, one, you probably have to design for jobs that don't exist yet. Like you design for data scientists in supply chain, and there's almost no data scientists in supply chain. But you design for those people and you have to create those new jobs. And you need to go with the innovators who are bold enough to get there and to do it. So it's a very interesting time. I would say that the cycle of adoption will be like 3 to 5 years, something like that. And the gains are going to be immense, mostly on the white collar side, which is exciting because actually one of the most hidden secrets is most of the factories that are in China right now can be reshored if we have very light white collar cost structure.
I was watching the Wall Street Journal does these really good like 9-minute videos on YouTube, and one of them was on the dark factories of China, right? You probably saw it. What do you think of that, the rise of that? Or are you kind of seeing the same thing in Europe where manufacturers are kind of reimagining the factory from the ground up and building extreme automation, throughout the process?
There's a lot of innovation around that, which is extreme automation like that. What we are seeing is like dark factories are the extreme example, but what we think is most cost structure will stabilize with very few people with a lot of leverage. So
you can imagine, 5 or 10 years in the future, factories are basically dark. You got one business person walking around and one like robotics and engineer expert walking around.
So what we think is that a lot of factories will be like data centers. So in a typical data center, you get like 30, 50 people, but the value generated is immense. Like kind of the same thing can happen to the factory. And this is why, coming back to Tesla, to do that, you need to be able to control the software that runs your factory because it is software defined. Like the automation is software defined. And so most factories right now are not software defined, like almost all of them. And so the big shift that is going to come is a software definition of automation.
Yeah. So do you think factories of the future run on like open source software so they can keep forking it and creating their own pull requests, or do you feel like there's centralized systems like ERP and CRM kind of systems for manufacturing?
So the really big thing that is an unknown right now are the norms. Everything runs on TCP/IP, and the marketing world converged on schema.org and all those very standardized way of naming things and interoperability and everything. None of that is true in the manufacturing world. And so the key question is, what will happen to that? There are some starts with like UNS, Unified Namespace. People are trying to push because today, effectively, the reason why SAP and Dassault are the biggest software providers for the manufacturing world is that they made it so their data is almost impossible to work with at scale through obfuscation of their data structure. And so actually, like the CPO of Dassault said that the thing that he was scared the most of is not any startup, is not anything regarding AI. It is those norms. And so if I had to guess, maybe like the big hyperscalers, like the Amazon, Azure, GCP, they will get fed up with manufacturing being such a tiny portion of their revenues, and they will try and get together and create an open source data schema. If that is true, then incredible things will happen. Or some of the SAP, Dassault, maybe some other, will go the Salesforce route and basically force an entire industry into some shared understanding of the. But that is going to be interesting. Like, I don't see the situation in a status quo for the next 5 to 10 years. That's the pressure is too high.
So Europe isn't necessarily known for its industrial startup velocity. What's misunderstood about the opportunity there?
So engineers are good, and they are 1/3 of the cost of an engineer in the US. So my strategy is basically very simple. We found product market fits in Europe, and then we go to the US. Almost everything US says about Europe is true. The legal framework is a nightmare. Things are slow. Capital is existing, but with too much fear. So there's no big bets. There is no IPO market, so you cannot IPO. There is no exit market, so you cannot exit your companies. Everything they say about that is true. But engineers are good because they are in a country that is like with lower living standards. And so you basically have to find product market fit in Europe and then become a US company. That's the strategy that we are having. And so out of our 20 companies, 3 already set up shop in the US as their main office and are operating from there. And so it's kind of like Israel. Israel in cybersecurity, they find the product market fit in Israel because they are so good at cybersecurity, because obviously, and then they go to the US. So I would say any ambitious European founder should pursue some kind of that way.
Right. Yeah, and that's the comparative advantage in economics, right? You find what you're really good at in a maybe a smaller market even, and then you can take it to the bigger market. What's your take on the tension between these software-led and hardware-integrated approaches in Industry 4.0?
I think the bottleneck is mainly software. So, for example, the gigacasting of the new Tesla car. So you basically do the hull of a car in one go without like any human touching the thing. You do it because 300 IoT sensors and AI. You don't do it because there is a new press in town. And so when you look at the last 5 years, the real gains that have been made, it's either new material, like deep science stuff, or software. Like, for example, creating a humanoid robot, like every single mechanical thing has been solved. Every single one. So now it's software.
That's really interesting. So basically, you can automate the manufacturing with robotics already. It's just software that's the bottleneck.
Yeah, and actually, it is software, and even more than that, it is the cost of software. Because give me any task, give me 10 million bucks, and I automate the task for you. Any task. The thing is, very, very few processes in manufacturing can justify such a high level of automation. And the secret in the secret is that you now have like 50K robots, 25K robots, but the cost of programming, having a human doing the thing, having a human understand the concept, doing so that the concept is rigid, having always the same thing at the same place, being automated in the same way and everything. The cost of that is so high that a lot of things have not been automated. And so if the cost of the line of software and or the understanding of the context gets like divided by 10 or 100, then incredible things happen in the realm of automation.
That's really interesting. And so I didn't know that. That was not an understanding I had of the factory floor. And the 10 million to automate, you have to imagine with the increases of the decreases in price and the increases in price performance of the robotics, and then you layer on kind of code gen tools like Cursor and other AI tools, basically 10xing software development. You have this like double order of magnitude, maybe this X.
Yeah, it's
increase
definitely on the next
in the next 5 to 10 years in the factories, which has profound implications for how manufacturing is done. Do you see that maybe going like producing a wave of onshoring and more micro manufacturing where you don't have to do these really, really massive tens of millions of dollars to automate things? You can spend maybe an order of magnitude less in both size and complexity and cost to automate ever like smaller runs of manufacturing.
So what I think will happen in the 5 to 10 years next year is that the supply chain will be much more like smartphone and less like doors. So let me just unpack. So if you think of your smartphone, there are like 20 smartphones that matters. They take up like 95% of the market. They are absolutely mass produced in ginormous factories with a level of care that is unheard of. And then your local indie developer develops an app just for you and push it to the smartphone. So the last mile of the value is done through software, but there are ginormous, like almost infrastructure-like kind of products. Now think of your door. Your door was made in a very small factory with very low margin. It's a very bad business to be in, the door business. And the amount of innovation of the
doll, like a children's doll?
No, doors, like the
doors, like just wooden doors.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it.
And the amount of innovation has been zero, and you cannot really ask someone to have like a different door. And so what I think is that most of physical things will be a layer of enormous factories that are doing like the infrastructure, and then a layer of incredibly agile little companies doing anything you want on top of the infrastructure. And so, for example, when you look at electrification, batteries are going to be made by ginormous factories.
Yeah.
But then
huge manufacturing processes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then what you put on top of the battery can be made by a microfactory with like infinite personalization possibilities. It's already happening in China, where actually there are more what they call LSEV, low speed electric vehicles. There are more LSEVs than regular EVs. And the
Right.
LSEVs, those people are going crazy with the design and everything.
These are all the e-bikes and
Yeah,
all
exactly.
the e-scooters. And
Yes, but look at the batteries. The batteries are all the same.
yeah, it could be just one cell or 4 cells, or
Yeah.
it could be, 75 kilowatts of cells in a car.
Yeah. And
But
so
it's
there
all the
may be
same
like,
building block.
yeah, and so there may be like 3 gigafactories producing the batteries, and then like 2,000 microfactories competing for the end design.
Which is the application layer of manufacturing, effectively. That's a really good analogy. Well, let's wrap up with a quick rapid fire. What's the most underrated startup in your portfolio right now?
I would say it is Vitesse Automation. They are doing basically no code and vibe coding for robots.
What's one industrial SaaS idea you're surprised nobody's built yet?
Marketing, like workforce planning for blue collars.
What's a factory tool or workflow you personally never want to use again?
I will go with SAP. SAP, the wall of it.
What's the hardest part about recruiting technical founders for industrial startups?
Finding people who are crafty enough, but won't do like microservice, Dockers, and over-engineer the heck out of everything on day one.
Where would you build your next manufacturing-focused startup hub, another hub for your venture studio?
Boston. We actually opened the Boston bureau like 2 weeks ago.
Boston?
Yes.
In Massachusetts in the US. Oh, very cool. Yeah, lots of industry there. You got the MIT and everything. Yeah. What's the most overhyped industrial trend of the last 12 months?
I would say foods with like insects.
Food with insects?
Yeah. They just take insects and they put it in pet food or like human food in a few.
Oh,
That's
wow.
really overhyped.
It's good protein, I guess, right? I've actually eaten insects in China. It's weird. What's the most underhyped trend in the last 12 months?
Nuclear energy.
Yeah, lots of really cool microreactors and things like that, new technologies. I think China's taken the lead there with some of our old technology. I was watching some videos on that. How long until fully autonomous factories become viable at scale?
I would say 5 years.
What's one lesson from Richmond or McKinsey that you still use daily?
Always a line left.
What does that mean? A line left?
When doing slides, you align all bullet points on the left side. That's very important for visual management.
If you had to replace OSS Ventures with an AI agent, what would you need to do first?
I would feed them the entirety of all user research that we have done in the last 4 or 5 years. Context.
I'll often think about that as a VC, like how long until it's my job is done by agents, basically. If you weren't building OSS, what would you be doing instead?
I would probably be doing a venture to let people vote without the Senate and like people in charge.
Direct democracy, kind of using technology to...
Yeah, consensus building bottom up without anyone in between.
What's dangerous about that, which is interesting, this is a whole nother podcast, but is, the way, we set it up in the US at least, was a representative form of government, right? And the founding fathers kind of feared the temper of the masses, I think is how they phrase it, or how kind of mob behavior can cause people to act in their own, disinterest. What do you think about that versus direct democracy? Like everybody gets a say,
I've paid a lot of thoughts of that. So what I think the founding father was saying is that short term, the masses can take very bad decisions because they are angry and everything. But long term, basically, you can change constitution. So your long term, you can change the rules. And so I think what the founding father were saying is true, but it can be solved with a consensus mechanism where short term, you cannot change everything. You can change a part of the thing. But if you are consistent in wanting to change a bigger chunk of the social contract over time, then like at the end, you can literally change constitution. But you need to time the thing so it's not like a spur of the moment, let's get everything out the window kind of situation.
Yeah, we just passed a big, beautiful bill. And I can just imagine okay, all 181 million American voters should read this and vote on it, it's
exactly.
Thousands of pages and,
And so I think consensus is like granularity, timing, subjects. It's fascinating when you think about it.
Yeah. Political economy is very interesting. I almost went back to grad school in my 20s to study political economy. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Where can folks find you online?
OSS Ventures. I'm quite active on Twitter, so Renan Devillieres, and please contact us if you're someone like an exited founder thinking, hey, maybe I should set foot in a factory. If you are an industrialist saying, hey, those guys, so I can house those guys for free in my factory. Yes, you can. So just hit us up. And basically, anyone interested in trying to get the world of operations to work a little better for everyone.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you, Brian.